For those of you who have not had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Jason Adams. I am a staff instructor for Wicklander Zulawski. Today, I want to talk with you about an issue that I see kind of reoccurring as I conduct interviews and I see interviews conducted and I conduct classes. It's something that I see happen time and time again. And like I said, I'm guilty of it myself. And so kind of what that is this, right? Let's say that you've got your witness, you call your witness in, you want to conduct an interview with them about an incident they've seen. And so you set up about an hour block of time, 2 hour block of time to conduct your interview. You bring them in, you start the interview, you can do your establishing your baseline, right? Developing rapport. And about 15 minutes in the conversation, there's dead silence. There's dead silence because the subject has just answered your last closed-ended question, and you're trying to figure out what question to ask next because you don't know what the subject knows. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. How do we get there? And, it kind of starts off innocently, if you will, is I use the name Bob as kind of my generic subject in my interviews. So if your name is Bob or you know somebody that's named Bob, I'm not talking about you or them. It's my generic name for people I talk to in my interviews. But I bring Bob in, and Bob is telling me about he saw a truck pulled up behind a warehouse and some people are unloading some metal crates. And so then at some point in that interview, I look at Bob and I say, "Hey, Bob, what kind of truck was it? Was it like a flatbed or a box truck?" And so then Bob says, box truck. Okay, great. Hey, so what color was it? And it's white. Okay, good. How many tires did it have? Well, it has like 6 tires. Okay. What I've just done is I've transitioned into this cycle of this closed-ended question after closed-ended question. I'm kind of training Bob. That's how the interview is going to work. And so now he is waiting for me to ask that closed-ended question so he can answer it. And what we want to do is we want to get out of that. We want to try to avoid getting into that place where we're asking one closed-ended question after another. In the interview, in the notes for this, I put out a funnel. I said funnel. A couple of people asked me what I meant by funnel. When we teach our course, one of the diagrams, this is straight out of our level 1 book. It reminds me of a funnel, and I always kind of sell it that way as we talk about these series of questions that we ask. And it's talk about how it's so easy to get stuck in the tip of this funnel, closing a question after closing a question. So I kind of want to talk about how we can avoid getting stuck in that position and how we can work ourselves out when we do realize we're there, because we all do it. I mean, I do it myself. I'm guilty of it more times than I like to say. So let's talk about how we get there. And so all of us probably start out, right, with that open-ended question is, I bring Bob in, I ask him to tell me about what happened. And so Bob tells me about seeing the truck and the people unloading behind the warehouse. And so I want to find out more about the truck. And so you probably do this as well. You ask what we call those expansion questions, which is just an open-ended question that has them focus upon that story, right? And so, hey, so what can you tell me about the truck? And so Bob starts telling me about the truck, and it was a bigger truck, And so then we ask what we call those echo questions to get that defined. When you say bigger, what do you mean by bigger? That's an echo question. And so he goes through telling me the story, and he gets down to the point where, like, for instance, maybe he just didn't tell me if there was a license plate on the truck, right? And so I need to find out. I need to ask the question if there was. And so our fallback is always, okay, Bob, was there a license plate on the truck? And that's going to give me my answer that I need. But then Bob's not going to start talking beyond that. I need to figure out a way to get Bob to start talking more. And so typically when I teach this block of instruction, I will talk about basically just changing the wording of our closed-ended question. Instead of asking, was there a license plate on the truck? I'm going to ask, what can you tell me about? What can you tell me about a license plate on the truck? And then Bob maybe goes, oh yeah, there was a license plate. It was kind of on the left-hand side. And I don't remember the numbers, but like the last numbers were 36. And one thing, say it was maybe an Illinois plate. Bob just answered 4 questions for me. My closing question would have been, did you see a license plate? Where was the license plate at? Did you get a number? Can you tell me what state it was? But I didn't need to do all that because I simply asked, what can you tell me about? And, changing your closing questions to start off with the phrasing, what can you tell me about, might seem a little bit weird to you at first when you do it a few times, but do one interview. And when you get to the part about asking us closing questions, change the wording to what can you tell me about and just see how it works. See how it works for you. when we do our classes, we do an exercise where we have some of the students interview some of the other students, and then we as instructors will ask that interviewer questions about what they talked about. And in fact, one of my last classes that I did, the one of the interviewer was telling me about the car the subject was telling them about. And so my question, they didn't tell me the make and model of the car, but I wanted to see if I could get that from them. And so I asked the question, what can you tell me about the make and model of the car? And they looked at me and said, well, I don't know. I didn't ask that question, but I do know that they got a new car to replace it, and that was a Ford Mustang. If I'd have just asked what was the make and model of the car, I would probably go, well, I don't know. I didn't ask that question. But because I asked it, what can you tell me about, it gives the individual, the subject, this expectation that you're wanting more than just a one-word answer. And that will a lot of times lead them into another series of questions that you can ask. And so as we work that funnel and we get down, you're going to hit a point where you've got to ask the closing questions. You're going to get there because there's going to be some points of information that you need that you're just not getting through their narration. And so you're going to have to ask those questions, right? And so try it. Just one interview. Try, what can you tell me about? And see if that doesn't generate them speaking more. Because remember, in every interview, it is more productive if our subject uses more words than we use to ask questions. Even in our subject interviews, our suspect interviews, right? I want them talking more. They have the information that I need. I don't know what questions I need to ask to draw that information out. I need them to lead me down that path. And so what happens when I get to the point of that funnel and I'm saying, what can you tell me about? And now I'm still just getting 1 or 2 word answers and we don't get back into a narration, right? How can I overcome that? One of the things I will typically do is if Bob's telling me a story about a truck and he saw people unloading the truck and they're putting it in a warehouse. And so we get into the discussion about the truck and I get all that point down. And now I'm at that point in my conversation where there's silence. I'll just look at Bob and say, okay, we talked about the truck. Now take me from when you saw the truck, what happened after that? And maybe I remember what happened after that. But what I need to do is I need to get Bob talking again while I think of my next questioning strategy. I need Bob using his words. I need Bob speaking while I try and figure out where to go next. And so you get down to that point of that funnel, try rephrasing those closing questions. And once you get the information you need, get them back into a narration of the story, any part of the story. Just ask them something that gets them telling you a story again. Then as they do that, you can figure out your next questioning strategy. And so we talked about some of the, and if you got the handout, I don't know if you did, but we'll talk about the use of some of the cognitive interview techniques. And we do teach the cognitive interview course. There's a lot to a cognitive interview, but one of the things I kind of want to pull out of that, in light of this, in light of trying to gain information from our subject and get them talking and get details, it's just the 3 types of techniques that we use and that we teach in our cognitive interview. The diagram it, change of perspective, and reverse order. You can use these techniques in any interview you do. It doesn't have to be a cognitive interview, but you can use these in any interview. Have them draw a diagram. If you find you're at that point of that funnel and you just don't know where to go from the question next, just ask them to draw a picture, right? It's the easiest way to get them engaged again while you try and figure out where your next question is going to be. So like in my scenario, Bob is driving down the street. He sees a truck. They're unloading something, moving it into a warehouse. I've asked all the questions I think I can ask. I don't know where to go. Hey, Bob, would you mind? I'm not asking you to be an artist, but would you mind just kind of drawing a diagram? If I were overhead looking down, what would it look like on the street? And as you're drawing that, tell me what you're drawing, right? And so that's going to get Bob talking. That's going to get him thinking. That's going to get him changing his perspective, right? He's going to draw that from a different point of view, draw it out. And as he's talking, that's going to eliminate you from having to come back later and go, well, what is this? What is this? What is this? A bunch of closing questions. But as he's narrating that, that's, again, giving you some more ideas on questions you can ask and getting him talking. And you probably heard this before. The more someone tells a story, the more details they'll remember as they tell that story, right? And so getting them talking about it more, getting them from drawing the map of it and explaining the map as they draw it or explaining the diagram as they draw it will help them bring up more memories about what they saw. And will also give you the opportunity, again, to get them talking while you think of where your next questions are going to come from. Change of perspective is the same way, So Bob, you're driving down the street. You saw this from here. if you were standing on this other corner here on your map, what would you see from there? Again, maybe you can't think of any more questions you need to ask, but get them talking from that perspective. Again, that will bring up more memory, that will bring up more detail, and it will give you more areas to ask questions in. We don't want to just get stuck in that, I don't know what to ask next, so let's not have a discussion, right? So what we're trying to do is do anything that we can to promote Bob into speaking more. All right. And then the reverse order, and that's always a good one too. Have them talk backwards through an event. I'll tell you how I like to do it is, okay, Bob, you drove down the street and you saw this. Now let's pretend like we're watching this on TV and you've got a tape in your VCR. Now, I know I'm giving my age away when I say VCR, but you've got it recorded in your digital recorder and you're watching it. You get to the end where you're pulling off the street and you don't see it anymore. What I'd like you to do, just push pause and then push rewind or reverse and start telling me what I see as we go back through this. And why that works is when you witness an event, like I go pump gas in my truck, right? I get out of my truck, I put my card in, I put the nozzle in the fuel tank, fill up, get back in the truck. I looked at the pump. I could probably describe the pump to you, but as I recount the story in my mind, my brain makes a jump from what I consider an important point to the next important point. And so your brain kind of builds those pathways. I'm not a brain surgeon, but you kind of get the hint, right? Your brain kind of builds these pathways. And so as you recall the memory, the brain runs through a familiar routine. When you have them do it in reverse, the brain is not used to running it that way. So it will start trying to pull all the memory that it can associated with that incident. And so you'll get more detail out that way. Again, cognitive interview technique. We do a lot of other things in cognitive interview, but these three are three of the primary techniques. This will help you get more detail even outside of cognitive interview, so you can still ask these questions. And then lastly here, I want to give you something extra to take away from here, I guess. And so we want to talk a little bit about what I call sequential narration, contrastive analysis, sensory exploration, and reflective dialogue, right? The first one there is that sequential narration. And what all sequential narration is where you have someone to describe something or tell you an event from one moment to the next, or from top to bottom, or from left to right, whatever that is. And so the easiest way to do that is when you follow up on the diagram, right? So if Bob's telling me about the truck, I may say, okay, Bob, hey, do me a favor. I'm not asking you to be an artist, but just to kind of help me get a picture. Can you just draw a truck for me? I'll give him pen and piece of paper. Maybe he draws this, right? You're going to see how bad of an artist I am here in just a second, but you can't see. So I got the box, I got wheels, I got the cab, I got the front wheel like this, right? And then all I'll do, it doesn't have to be a good diagram. I'll just take his diagram, and then I'll take a blank piece of paper and I'll just lay it over the top of it. Okay, Bob, here's what I want to do is I'm going to slowly move this piece of paper back from the back of the truck to the front. And as I do this, let's just talk about what we're seeing. I want you to describe as in much detail as you can. Now I'll slowly pull that paper. Okay, so we got the back end where maybe the door is at. Describe what I see here. And I'll get all that description now as much as they can give me. And then I'll just keep slowly moving that across. So you can do this with individuals. Draw just a stick person and slowly reveal the person down. Have them describe what they're seeing. Again, people will typically leave out information that they don't think is relevant as they're telling you a story because they just don't think you want the minutia of it, right? But when you do it that way, and when you take them through that sequential narration, they will give you everything they do remember about an event. And so that will help you get to the information that you need. Next, we have the comparative analysis. And comparative analysis is just where you have them kind of compare two things. And again, where I've used this before is somebody's telling, like the truck. We have the vehicle, right? He's described the truck to me. And at some point, maybe I'll ask Bob, okay, Bob, let me ask you this. I've got that truck and a truck that looks like it parked in a parking lot. I need to make sure that I'm getting in the right truck. As I look at those two trucks in the parking lot, is there anything about this truck that would let me know that that's the right one that I need to get into? And now cause Bob thinking, oh yeah, we know it. There was a crack on the bottom left of the windshield. I do remember that, right? There was a crack where there's a sticker on the left-hand side of Snoopy or something like that. Anything to get them, again, thinking about what's different or what's unique about that and digging those details out. Next, we have what is called the sensory exploration. And that's where you get them, you ask them non-typical sensory questions to see if you can spur any more information. A good example of that is Bob's watching them unload these crates out of the back of a truck. And so he says they're metal crates. And so you ask him to describe them. He says they're shiny metal crates, right? And so maybe you're thinking chrome plated or something like that. Ask Bob, hey, Bob, let's pretend like you've got this crate sitting in front of you. I want you to just take your finger. I want you to touch it. I want you to rub your finger across it. What does it feel like? And maybe Bob says, oh, it feels really smooth. Or maybe Bob says, well, it feels a little rough because it's got the little lines in it, And what he's describing now is maybe burnished metal as opposed to chrome. And so now you've got a better idea of what it is you're looking for. But those non-typical sensory probes can help you gain a little bit more information, a little bit more clarifying information, right? I say, Bob, hey, let's pretend like you're helping them unload and they hand you the crate. Describe me what it feels like. And maybe you'll say, oh, well, I don't know if I'd be able to pick it up. They look kind of big. And the guys that were carrying it were really strong, but it looks like they were straining. So again, that gives you more information than maybe you got in your in the dialogue that you had before, right? So using these different sensory techniques and ask them their opinion on that can give you a little bit more information on what you're looking for. And then lastly, we'll talk about that reflective dialogue. And reflexive dialogue is simply using the terms that your subject is using in an interview. And there's a couple of reasons for that. From the perspective of this, of trying to get more detail, it's important because of this. If I'm talking to Bob and I'm asking Bob about the front of the vehicle, and he says, well, it's got one of the metal things on there that kind of protect the vehicle, right? And so in my brain, I go, oh, you mean like the grill? And so I just plug that word into his description. I just gave him that term. And so he's going to say, yeah, the grill. And so he'll talk about the grill and talk about the grill of other vehicles. But what he's actually talking about is the bumper. But because I jumped in to complete his thought for him, I gave him the wrong word, right? So we want to use the terms that it. So when you're talking about this metal thing on the front of the truck that protects it, describe it better to me, right? And he may describe to you the bumper, but I never want to feed him that word because I want him to give me more detail. But also another reason we use reflective terms or reflective dialogue, especially in cases like maybe child abuse or child endangerment, is we never want to feed a definition or a term to a person who doesn't normally know it. For instance, if I have a young child who I interviewed because of a sexual assault and they go to court and they start talking about penetration and coitus, the lawyer is going to jump on that real quick saying that this person was coached, right? So we never, ever give them the term. They may ask for us the term and we can talk with them and get a better definition of it, but we want to use reflective terminology. Like they say, if Bob says, oh yeah, I went down to the intersection and there was the post with the light on top, right? And I go, oh, the stoplight. And he goes, yeah, the stoplight. So talk about stoplight. And all the time he's actually talking about a lamp post because I just filled that in for him. We need to let them tell us what they see, and then we just use that reflective term. We never want to give them terms that they can use in lieu of what they're trying to describe because we may get it wrong. All right. So again, I didn't want to take a lot of your time this morning, but I want to thank everybody for attending. Merry Christmas to you. If you ever have a question, please never hesitate to reach out and email me. I'm at jadams@w-c.com. I'll answer any question. You may get an answer from me. You're going to go, well, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. Well, and now at least you know how not to do it, right? So reach out, contact us. If you have any questions, please ask. Other than that, happy Christmas, and we'll see you all next year, hopefully. So have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.